Yo, what is up, YouTube? In this review, I'm going to be taking a look at the the Pulsar X2H uh, Esports Edition. As you guys probably know, this is the high hump variant of the X2, and it's also the Esports Edition, as I just mentioned, which is characterized by this pretty sick OLED screen at the bottom, which is neat the first 10 minutes you use the mouse, and then you just completely forget about it. In addition to this aluminum scroll wheel, which feels like absolute shit if you have slightly oily hands at all. So, yeah, if you guys can't tell, I don't really have a particularly high opinion of this mouse, and we're going to get right into that, starting with the build quality, which, as in typical Pulsar fashion, is a disaster. Right out of the box, my skates were severely dented in the left corner, and they were extremely scratchy, so I had to get replacement skates. And then, well, I used it until I got the replacements, which was fucking annoying. And then the base was also super wobbly, so I had to fix the wobbly base. But most egregious of all was that the scroll wheel, and I think this is actually a fairly common issue with the X2 line, but the scroll wheel, it moves out of the encoder. After a couple of days, it started moving out of the encoder, and it started scraping against the bracket that holds the scroll wheel up in the mouse. It's just wild to me that hasn't been fixed, and I had to fix it with some tape and lube. But yeah, it's just kind of unreal that's an issue. So yeah, on the QC front, Pulsar has, I would say they really haven't improved since I originally purchased my X2, which also had really bad base wobble and scroll wheel issue. So keep that in mind. You know, from Pulsar, the company, what you get is, you know, just be wary of what you get from that company. So yeah, build quality issues aside, the tangibles are overall pretty decent. The coating is it's decent. This is basically like a super light coating. It's actually, compared to the Vaxi coating, it's actually more or less the same. The matte Vaxi coating, though I do prefer the colored Vaxi coatings, but that's like a different material. So the coating is very good. But I want to talk about my biggest gripe with this mouse, which is the clicks. These are some brand of optical, I don't fucking know, but they are way too heavy. And oh fuck, whatever. To prove my point, I have my Rocket Burst Pro here, which is universally accepted to have pretty obnoxiously heavy clicks. And if I do, you know, a completely scientific test using Newton's third law, if you guys can't tell, I'm basically the rocket switch is activating way before the pulsar. If you guys can hear, the pulsar is the louder second activation. And yeah, the rocket is not only lighter, but also quieter if you care. These switches are very loud and fairly obnoxious. I don't actually care about that, but if you do, keep that in mind. So yeah, one last thing I want to touch on before getting into the shape, and another thing that just is kind of sad with this Pulsar esports mouse is the polling rate stability. And I think the only stable polling rates are between both wired and wireless mode is going to be 1K wireless and 2K wireless. And it's debatable whether 2K wireless is even particularly stable, but at least 1K wireless performance is pretty good. And I've been using it on 2K with no issues, but 4K has a lot of dropped polls, so you might get stuttering or, you know, just lose tracking occasionally in game. You know, ultimately, whether that really is super impactful is debatable, but figured I'd mention it because Pulsar is charging $130 and they're marketing this as an esports mouse. And I think that's you know, you'd want your sensors to be mostly flawless if you're charging that much. So yeah, last but not least, let's talk about the shape, which is kind of like a bastard child of a XM1. because this doesn't really have the flat sides of the X2 and a ZA12. And I'm going to say that this shape has, I think, a lot of potential. But, and the funny thing is that now that I'm thinking about it, this hump is just too large, right? In my opinion, it's right on the verge of being, if you really, really want a locked in grip and you have larger hands like me, like I have 19.5 by 11 hands, this mouse absolutely locks you in and it gives you an insane amount of stability. But the thing is, that's, for me, that's just on the verge of being uncomfortable because you really can't do any micro adjustments. And it feels like the mouse is being like pulled forward out of your hand just because of how bulky it is. So it's not unusable by any means. Like, I play fine with it, but it's not actually that comfortable. But in my opinion, this hump should just be 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters down. Maybe not even 2 millimeters, just 1 millimeter is all this needs. And the thing is, I think that would actually put it more or less in line with like the XM1 hump. And then at that point, like how different is this from XM1? It's basically just slightly narrower in the front without the front flares. So yeah, overall, I mean, shape wise, it's a decent shape. You know, I'm more or less, I'm ragging on this mouse because of all the other issues it has, but the shape is overall pretty good. But I don't think it's anything that you really should be dropping your hard-earned cash on. So, in terms of just the shape, it's not that special. So that in tandem with all the other issues this mouse has, I'm just gonna say you should steer clear of it. It looks cool. This mouse looks fucking sick, and the OLED screen is a really, really neat party trick. But in terms of being a good gaming mouse, this mouse just falls short in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's my review. If you guys have any questions, just drop a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.